In today's episode, we're exploring 3 tragic encounters where tourists learned too late, from a family's fatal photo opportunity to newlyweds whose honeymoon dream became their final moment together. Let's begin with the first story, where one father's desire for the perfect photograph cost his entire family everything. It was August 14th, 2015, and the sprawling wilderness of a private game reserve near Hutchinson, South Africa, stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun. The landscape was a patchwork of golden grasslands and scattered acacia trees, with distant mountains creating a dramatic backdrop for one of Africa's most pristine wildlife sanctuaries. Robert Hutchinson navigated his rented Toyota Land Cruiser along the dusty track, his wife Karen in the passenger seat, while their 2 children, 14-year-old Emma and 12-year-old Dylan, pressed their faces against the back windows. The Hutchinson family had arrived from suburban Connecticut 3 days earlier, fulfilling Robert's lifelong dream of experiencing an African safari. At 41, Robert worked as a marketing executive for a pharmaceutical company, a demanding career that left little time for the adventure he craved. This trip represented years of saving and planning, and Robert was determined to capture every moment on his expensive new camera. The private reserve allowed self-drive safaris, giving visitors freedom to explore while following strict safety guidelines. During orientation, the reserve manager had been explicit. Stay on designated roads, keep windows mostly closed, never turn off your engine near predators, and maintain at least 50 meters distance from lions. After 2 days of peaceful wildlife viewing, Robert had begun seeing these warnings as overly cautious suggestions rather than life-saving protocols. This particular afternoon, the Hutchinsons had been following a pride of lions for nearly an hour. 3 adult females, 2 adolescent males, and 4 cubs tumbled and played near a watering hole. Other vehicles had come and gone, maintaining proper distance, but Robert wanted more. He wanted the photograph that would make his colleagues jealous, the image that would prove he had experienced something extraordinary. African lions are apex predators living in complex social structures called prides, typically consisting of related females, their offspring, and a coalition of males. Adult females do most of the hunting and are fiercely protective of their cubs, viewing any potential threat with immediate aggression. Lions can sprint at speeds up to 50 miles per hour in short bursts and possess bite forces exceeding 600 pounds per square inch. Despite their familiarity with safari vehicles, lions remain wild predators with unpredictable behavior, especially when they perceive threats to their young or territory. Robert steered the Land Cruiser off the designated track, driving across virgin grassland to position closer to the pride. He maneuvered to within 20 meters of the lions, far closer than safety protocols allowed. Robert rolled down his window completely, extending his camera outside for an unobstructed shot. Karen opened her window halfway, caught up in the excitement. The lionesses rose from their resting positions, their body language shifting from relaxed to alert. Their ears swiveled forward, focusing on the vehicle, and their tails began to twitch in a warning pattern. Robert fired off a rapid series of shots, the camera's shutter clicking loudly. One female took several steps toward the vehicle, her head lowered and her eyes fixed on the open windows. Robert finally recognized the danger and decided they needed to leave immediately. He shifted into reverse, but the Land Cruiser's rear wheels spun uselessly. The soft ground near the watering hole, saturated from recent rains and animal traffic, had turned into deceptive mud beneath the dry surface crust. The more Robert accelerated, the deeper the rear wheels sank. The grinding of spinning tires and the revving engine created a harsh mechanical noise that echoed across the grassland. The lionesses interpreted the sound and the vehicle's lurching movements as aggressive behavior. Karen suggested they call for help on the radio, but Robert was convinced he could free the vehicle himself. He opened his door and stepped out to assess the situation, ignoring Karen's protests. The moment his feet touched the ground, the lead lioness charged. She covered the 20 meters in less than 3 seconds, her powerful body moving with terrifying speed across the grassland. Robert tried to scramble back into the vehicle, but the lioness reached him before he could pull his legs inside. Her jaws clamped onto his thigh, her 4-inch canine teeth penetrating deep into the muscle. Robert screamed and grabbed the doorframe, trying to pull himself up, but the lioness's weight dragged him back down. She shook her head violently, and Robert's grip on the doorframe failed. Karen screamed and lunged across the center console, trying to grab Robert's arms and pull him back inside. The lioness maintained her grip on Robert's leg and began dragging him away from the vehicle. A second lioness, emboldened by the first's attack, approached the driver's side. She reared up and thrust her head through the open door, her front paws on the driver's seat. Karen released Robert and tried to scramble back to the passenger side, but the lioness's claws raked across her back and shoulders. Dylan grabbed the radio handset and pressed the emergency button, screaming for help. His panicked voice transmitted across the reserve's emergency frequency. Emma pulled her brother away from the front seats, and both children huddled in the rear cargo area. The first lioness had dragged Robert approximately 10 meters from the vehicle. Her jaws released his leg and clamped onto his throat, crushing his trachea and severing the carotid artery. Robert's struggles weakened rapidly as blood loss and oxygen deprivation took effect. The second lioness pulled Karen halfway out of the driver's door, her powerful jaws closing on Karen's neck. Karen's body went limp within seconds. The attack had lasted approximately 2 minutes when a reserve ranger vehicle appeared on a nearby ridge. The ranger had been conducting a routine patrol when Dylan's emergency transmission came through. He immediately drove toward the GPS coordinates while radioing for backup and firing his rifle into the air. The sharp cracks of gunfire echoed across the grassland. The two lionesses released their victims and backed away from the vehicle, startled by the unfamiliar sound. The ranger reached the Land Cruiser within 90 seconds of firing the warning shots. He found Emma and Dylan traumatized but physically unharmed in the back of the vehicle. Robert and Karen lay motionless on the ground near the driver's side. The ranger immediately called for medical evacuation while checking for vital signs. Robert had already succumbed to his injuries, his throat wound catastrophic. Karen had a faint pulse, but her neck injuries were severe. The ranger applied pressure to her wounds and tried to stabilize her, but she lost consciousness and died before the medical helicopter arrived 12 minutes later. Additional rangers arrived and secured the scene while the children were evacuated. Emma and Dylan were airlifted to a hospital in Johannesburg for treatment of shock. The investigation revealed that Robert had violated multiple safety protocols, most critically exiting the vehicle in the presence of lions. The tragedy devastated the extended Hutchinson family back in Connecticut and sent shockwaves through the safari tourism industry. The reserve implemented additional safety measures, including mandatory GPS tracking with automatic alerts when vehicles left designated roads. The lions involved were not euthanized, as wildlife authorities determined the incident resulted entirely from human error. But the Hutchinson family's fatal encounter with a lion pride wasn't the only time tourists discovered that ignoring warnings about wildlife can turn deadly. It was June 22, 2016, and the Chobe River in Botswana flowed lazily through one of Africa's most spectacular wildlife corridors. The riverbanks were crowded with elephants, buffalo, and countless other species drawn to the permanent water source during the dry season. Melissa and Trevor Ashford had been married for exactly 9 days, having chosen an African safari as their honeymoon destination. Both 29 years old, the couple had met 3 years earlier while working at the same advertising agency in London. Trevor was a graphic designer with an adventurous spirit, while Melissa worked in account management. They had booked a guided canoe safari along the Chobe River, an increasingly popular activity that allowed tourists to experience wildlife from water level. Their guide, Kabo Moati, was a veteran river guide with 12 years of experience navigating the Chobe's waters and the dangerous animals that inhabited them. During the morning safety briefing, Kabo had been explicit about the rules: remain seated at all times, keep voices low, never put hands in the water, maintain distance from hippos and crocodiles, and most importantly, follow all instructions immediately without question. Nile crocodiles are among Africa's most dangerous predators, capable of taking prey as large as wildebeest and occasionally humans. Adult males can reach lengths of over 16 feet and weigh more than 1,000 pounds. These reptiles are ambush predators with incredible patience, often remaining motionless for hours before exploding into action. Their bite force exceeds 3,000 pounds per square inch, the strongest of any living animal. Crocodiles are particularly dangerous near riverbanks where they bask in the sun, and they can launch themselves from the water with shocking speed when prey comes within range. The morning had been spectacular. The couple had paddled past elephants drinking at the water's edge, watched hippos yawning in the shallows, and photographed countless birds. By early afternoon, Trevor had become increasingly bold, leaning over the canoe's edge for better camera angles, despite Cabo's repeated warnings to stay centered. They rounded a bend in the river, and Cabo immediately began back paddling, instructing the couple to remain absolutely still. On the muddy bank ahead, a massive Nile crocodile basked in the afternoon sun. The reptile was enormous, easily 14 feet long, with scarred armor plating that indicated an old and successful predator. Cabo began steering the canoe to give the crocodile a wide berth, explaining in a low voice that they needed to maintain at least 20 meters distance. Trevor wanted a close-up photograph of the crocodile, the kind of dramatic image that would dominate his social media feed. He argued with Cabo, insisting that the crocodile was clearly asleep and posed no danger. When Cabo refused to paddle closer, Trevor made a decision that would prove fatal. Despite Cabo's sharp warning to remain seated, Trevor stood up in the canoe to get a better angle for his photograph. The moment Trevor rose to his feet, the canoe's stability shifted dramatically. Melissa instinctively grabbed for Trevor's arm to pull him back down, but her sudden movement combined with Trevor's standing position created a catastrophic imbalance. The canoe rocked violently to one side. Trevor lost his balance and fell sideways, his weight pulling the canoe over. Melissa tumbled out the opposite side as the canoe capsized, dumping both of them into the chest-deep water, approximately 12 meters from the basking crocodile. Cabo managed to stay with the overturning canoe and immediately began shouting for the couple to swim toward him. He grabbed the capsized canoe and tried to right it, while radioing emergency coordinates with his waterproof radio. The moment Trevor and Melissa hit the water, the crocodile's eyes snapped open. The massive reptile launched itself from the bank with explosive speed, its powerful tail propelling its enormous body through the water in seconds. Trevor was closest to the crocodile and thrashing in panic, creating vibrations and splashing that attracted the predator's attention. The reptile's jaws clamped onto Trevor's torso, the 3,000-pound bite force crushing his ribcage instantly. Trevor's scream was cut short as the crocodile began its death roll, a hunting technique where the reptile spins rapidly to disorient prey and drown it. Trevor's body spun violently in the churning water, disappearing beneath the surface within seconds. Melissa had surfaced several meters away and was swimming desperately toward Cabo, her strokes frantic but hampered by her life jacket and the current. Cabo had managed to partially right the canoe and extended his paddle toward her, shouting for her to grab it. Melissa's fingers were inches from the paddle when she suddenly jerked backward and screamed. The same crocodile, having released Trevor's lifeless body, had turned its attention to the continued splashing and movement. The reptile surged through the water and clamped its jaws around Melissa's lower body. Cabo grabbed Melissa's outstretched hand and tried to pull her toward the canoe, but the crocodile's grip was absolute. The reptile began pulling backward, its immense strength easily overpowering Cabo's desperate efforts. Melissa's grip on Cabo's hand slipped as the crocodile dragged her away from the canoe. The reptile executed another death roll, and Melissa's body disappeared beneath the blood-stained water. Cabo continued shouting and paddling toward where Melissa had gone under, but neither she nor Trevor resurfaced. The entire sequence from capsize to the final attack had lasted approximately 90 seconds. A motorized patrol boat from the Chobe National Park headquarters arrived within 8 minutes of Cabo's first emergency call. The Rangers found Cabo clinging to his partially capsized canoe, still scanning the water for any sign of the couple. The Rangers pulled Cabo into their boat and immediately began a search pattern, using poles to probe the murky water while maintaining vigilant watch for crocodiles. They spotted Trevor's body floating face down approximately 30 meters from the attack site within 15 minutes. Trevor had sustained massive trauma to his torso and had clearly died within moments of the initial attack. Melissa's body was not immediately visible, and the increasing number of crocodiles in the area made continued searching extremely dangerous. After 2 hours of intensive searching, with no sign of Melissa, and with darkness approaching, authorities made the difficult decision to suspend the search until first light. The following morning, a larger search team located Melissa's body in the reeds along the opposite bank, approximately approximately 100 meters from where she had been taken. The investigation determined that Trevor's decision to stand up in the canoe had directly caused the capsize, and that both deaths resulted entirely from tourist error rather than guide negligence. Cabo was cleared of any wrongdoing, though he was deeply traumatized by witnessing the attacks and his inability to save either tourist. The deaths of Melissa and Trevor Ashford devastated their families and sent shockwaves through the safari tourism industry. Chobe River operators implemented additional safety measures, including stricter enforcement of the no-standing rule. The incident served as a grim reminder that Africa's waterways are among the continent's most dangerous environments. Yet the Ashford newlyweds' fatal encounter with Chobe's crocodiles wasn't the only time someone's arrogance about understanding wildlife proved deadly. It was October 8, 2017, and the dense forests of Bwindi Impenetrable National Park in Uganda rose steeply from the valley floor, their canopy shrouded in mist. The park is home to roughly half of the world's remaining mountain gorillas, and gorilla trekking had become one of Africa's most sought-after wildlife experiences. Vincent Kowalski had traveled from his home in Warsaw, Poland, specifically to photograph the park's habituated gorilla families during the peak trekking season. At 44, Vincent was an accomplished amateur wildlife photographer whose images had been featured in several European nature magazines. He had photographed dangerous animals on 3 continents, and each successful expedition had reinforced his belief that he possessed an almost supernatural ability to read animal behavior. Vincent's confidence had gradually transformed into arrogance, a dangerous mindset when dealing with wild primates. Vincent had hired a local guide team led by Moses, an experienced tracker with 20 years of experience working with Bwindi's gorilla families. The park's rules were explicit. Maintain 7 meters distance from gorillas, limit visits to 1 hour, never make direct eye contact with silverback males, no flash photography, and absolutely no touching the animals under any circumstances. The 2 men had been working together for 3 days, and the relationship had become increasingly strained. Vincent constantly pushed to get closer to the gorillas, dismissing Moses's cautions as overcautious. On their 4th morning, Moses located a family group of 19 gorillas resting in a clearing. The family included a massive silverback male, several adult females, juveniles, and 2 infants. Mountain gorillas are among the world's most powerful primates, with adult silverback males weighing up to 400 pounds and possessing strength estimated at 10 times that of an adult human. Despite their generally peaceful nature, silverbacks are fiercely protective of their families and will attack perceived threats with devastating force. Their canine teeth can reach 2 inches in length, and their bite force exceeds 1,300 pounds per square inch. Vincent spent 40 minutes photographing the family from the required 7-meter distance. Moses believed they were having an excellent trek, but Vincent was not satisfied. He wanted intimate close-ups that would show the gorilla's expressions in detail, images that would set his work apart from typical gorilla photography. Vincent announced his intention to move closer to the silverback for a portrait shot, a suggestion that Moses immediately and firmly rejected. Moses explained that approaching a silverback was extremely dangerous, that the animal would perceive it as a direct challenge to his authority, and that no photograph was worth the risk. Vincent argued that his experience with primates had taught him how to read their body language, and that the silverback was clearly relaxed. The argument escalated, with Vincent accusing Moses of being overcautious. Vincent finally declared that he was the client, that he had paid substantial fees for this trek, and that he would do as he pleased. Moses warned that if Vincent violated the distance protocols, he would immediately end the trek and report the incident to park authorities. Vincent ignored the warning and began moving slowly towards the silverback, his camera raised. He closed the distance from 7 meters to 5, then to 3. Moses called out urgent warnings, but Vincent waved him off dismissively. Vincent was now less than 2 meters from the massive silverback. The silverback had been watching Vincent's approach each with increasing agitation. His body language shifted from relaxed to alert, then to aggressive. He began displaying warning behaviors, standing upright to his full height of nearly 6 feet, beating his chest with cupped hands that produced a loud drumming sound, and tearing up vegetation to throw. These were clear threat displays that any experienced guide would have recognized as a final warning before an attack. Vincent either didn't recognize the warnings or chose to ignore them. He continued photographing, moving even closer to capture the silverback's display. The massive gorilla's patience ended. He charged with shocking speed, covering the 2-meter distance in less than a second. The silverback's enormous hand grabbed Vincent's shoulder, his grip crushing bone instantly. The gorilla threw Vincent to the ground with enough force to knock the wind from his lungs. Vincent's camera flew from his hands and smashed against a tree trunk, the lens shattering on impact. The silverback bit down on Vincent's arm, his 2-inch canines penetrating deep into the flesh and crushing bone. He then grabbed Vincent's head in both hands and slammed it against the ground. The impact caused severe skull fractures and traumatic brain injury. Vincent's body went limp, blood pooling beneath his head. Moses and the other guides shouted and made themselves large, trying to distract the silverback. After approximately 20 seconds of sustained attack, the silverback released Vincent and returned to his family, gathering them and moving deeper into the forest. Moses immediately radioed for emergency medical evacuation, while his assistant guides attempted to stabilize Vincent. Vincent was unconscious but still breathing, though his respirations were shallow and irregular. The guides applied pressure to his head wound and tried to immobilize his neck. A medical helicopter was dispatched from Kampala. However, the dense forest canopy made landing at their current location impossible. The helicopter crew identified a small clearing approximately 1 kilometer away where they could safely land. Moses and his team fashioned a makeshift stretcher, then began the difficult trek through the steep, muddy terrain toward the landing zone. The journey took nearly 40 minutes. Vincent remained unconscious throughout, his breathing becoming increasingly labored. They reached the clearing just as the helicopter touched down. Medical personnel immediately took over, intubating Vincent and starting IV fluids. The helicopter rushed Vincent to the regional hospital. Doctors stabilized him enough for transfer to a better-equipped facility in Kampala, where neurosurgeons performed emergency surgery to relieve pressure on his brain and repair his fractured skull. However, the damage was extensive. Vincent remained in a coma for 3 days before developing a severe infection from his wounds. Despite aggressive antibiotic treatment, sepsis set in. Vincent died 6 days after the attack, never having regained consciousness. The investigation was straightforward, as Moses's account was supported by the other guides present. Vincent's damaged camera was recovered and contained partial footage showing his approach toward the silverback, though the recording ended abruptly when the camera was knocked away. Vincent had deliberately violated fundamental safety protocols despite explicit warnings, and his death was ruled as resulting entirely from his own reckless decisions. Vincent's death sent shockwaves through the wildlife photography and gorilla trekking communities, sparking debates about the ethics of risk-taking for dramatic images. His family in Poland was devastated. Bwindi Impenetrable National Park used the incident to reinforce safety protocols and to emphasize that no photograph justified risking human life or disturbing endangered wildlife. Thanks for watching. Click the next video for more stories.